Picture this. You're sitting in your favorite restaurant, the same place where you celebrated your first promotion, your wedding anniversary, countless client victories. The waiter knows your order by heart. Your executive sits across from you, someone you've worked alongside for nearly a decade, someone you thought you could trust. And in the span of 15 minutes, between the appetizer and the main course, your entire world gets flipped upside down. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Marcus, and after 8 years of dedication, innovation, and building something extraordinary from the ground up, I was terminated over a Caesar salad and breadsticks. But here's the thing about assumptions. They can be dangerous, especially when you underestimate someone who's been quietly preparing for this moment longer than you realize. 8 years earlier, I walked into Davidson & Associates Marketing Solutions as a junior account coordinator with nothing but a communications degree, a worn-out laptop, and an unshakable belief that hard work would speak for itself. The office occupied 3 floors of a glass building in downtown Seattle, and I remember feeling both intimidated and exhilarated as I stepped into that elevator for the first time. The company specialized in integrated marketing campaigns for mid-tier technology companies. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make headlines, but steady work that kept the lights on. My supervisor, Janet Richardson, was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had climbed her way up from receptionist to senior manager over 2 decades. She didn't believe in hand-holding or sugar-coating feedback. "Listen, Marcus," she told me during my first week, "this industry will chew you up and spit you out if you don't learn to anticipate problems before they happen. Clients don't want excuses, they want solutions, and they want them yesterday." I took those words to heart. While other junior coordinators focused on completing their assigned tasks, I started studying our clients' industries, understanding their pain points, and identifying opportunities they hadn't even recognized yet. I'd arrive at the office by 7 in the morning, not because anyone asked me to, but because I genuinely wanted to understand how every piece of our operation fit together. The first client I was assigned to was Meridian Tech, a software company that developed inventory management systems for small businesses. Their marketing budget was modest, their expectations were low, and most of my colleagues saw them as a training wheels account. But I saw something different, a company with solid fundamentals that just needed someone to help them tell their story better. I spent weekends researching their competitors, analyzing their customer feedback, and mapping out their customer journey. I noticed they were losing potential clients not because their product was inferior, but because they couldn't effectively communicate their value proposition. Small business owners weren't looking for the most feature-rich solution. They wanted something reliable, affordable, and easy to implement. Working with Meridian's marketing director, Sarah Chen, I developed a campaign that focused on real-world case studies, rather than technical specifications. We created content that showed actual small business owners, explaining how the software had simplified their operations and improved their bottom line. The messaging was straightforward: less time managing inventory, more time growing your business. The campaign exceeded expectations by 30%. Lead generation increased, conversion rates improved, and most importantly, client satisfaction scores reached an all-time high. Sarah was so impressed that she specifically requested me for all future projects, and word started spreading within the company that the new guy had something special. But success at Davidson & Associates wasn't just about individual achievement. The company culture was built on collaboration, and I quickly learned that building relationships with colleagues was just as important as delivering results for clients. I made it a point to understand everyone's role, from the graphic designers who brought concepts to life, to the data analyst who tracked campaign performance. One person who stood out immediately was Thomas Brennan, the Vice President of Strategic Development. Tom was in his early 40s, impeccably dressed, and had a reputation for being both brilliant and demanding. He'd joined the company about 2 years before me, after a successful stint at a larger agency in San Francisco. Tom had a way of seeing the big picture that impressed everyone, including the company's founder, Richard Davidson. Tom and I first worked together on a project for a cybersecurity startup called Secure Vault. The client was preparing for a major product launch and needed a comprehensive campaign that would position them as a serious player in enterprise security. It was a high-stakes project with a significant budget, and Tom had specifically requested me for his team based on my work with Meridian. "Marcus," Tom said during our first strategy meeting, "this client represents the kind of account that can transform our agency's reputation. They're not just buying a campaign, they're buying into our vision for their company's future. I need someone who understands that every detail matters, every touchpoint is an opportunity to reinforce their brand message." I was honored by his confidence and determined to prove it was well placed. The Secure Vault campaign required coordination across multiple channels: digital advertising, content marketing, trade show presence, and strategic partnerships. I found myself working closely with Tom almost daily, learning from his strategic thinking and attention to detail. The campaign launch was a resounding success. Secure Vault's brand awareness increased by 60% within the first quarter, and they secured 3 major enterprise contracts directly attributed to our marketing effort. More importantly, the campaign caught the attention of several other cybersecurity companies, and Davidson and Associates became their go-to agency for that industry vertical. Tom's recognition of my contributions was generous and public. During the company's quarterly meeting, he made a point of highlighting my role in the campaign's success, crediting my research and client relationship management as key factors in the outcome. That recognition led to my first promotion from junior coordinator to account manager, along with a salary increase and responsibility for managing my own client portfolio. The promotion marked a turning point in my career at Davidson and Associates. I was no longer just executing other people's strategies, I was developing my own. My client roster grew to include 5 mid-tier technology companies, and I started building a reputation for understanding complex technical products and translating them into compelling marketing messaging. One of my most challenging clients was Integrated Systems Corp., a company that developed custom software solutions for manufacturing companies. Their CEO, Robert Martinez, was a brilliant engineer who had built an incredibly sophisticated product, but struggled to explain why it was superior to existing solutions. Our initial meetings were exercises in frustration, with Robert diving deep into technical specifications, while I tried to redirect the conversation toward customer benefit. The breakthrough came when I convinced Robert to let me spend a day at one of their client sites, observing how the software was actually used in a real manufacturing environment. I watched factory floor managers use the system to optimize production schedules, reduce waste, and improve quality control. More importantly, I saw how the software had transformed the daily experience of workers who previously spent hours on manual calculations and paperwork. That site visit became the foundation for a campaign that focused on human impact rather than technical features. Instead of leading with processor speeds and data integration capabilities, we told stories about manufacturing workers who could now spend more time on value-added activity, managers who could make decisions based on real-time data, and companies that had improved their competitiveness in global markets. The campaign's success wasn't just measured in metrics, though those were impressive, but in the genuine enthusiasm it generated within Integrated Systems. Robert, who had initially been skeptical of marketing in general, became one of our most vocal advocates. He started referring other companies to us, and his testimonials became powerful tools for winning new business. This pattern of success continued across my entire client portfolio. I wasn't just managing accounts, I was building partnerships. Clients began to see me not as their marketing vendor, but as an extension of their own teams. They'd call me for advice on product positioning, competitive analysis, and strategic plan. This level of trust and collaboration was exactly what I'd hoped to achieve when I first started at Davidson Associates. My relationship with Tom also continued to evolve. He began including me in higher-level strategic discussions, seeking my input on new business proposals and agency positioning. We'd often stay late after client meetings, discussing industry trends and brainstorming ways to differentiate our service. Tom had a way of challenging my thinking that pushed me to consider angles I might have missed. "Marcus," he told me during one of these conversations, "you have something that can't be taught. the ability to genuinely connect with people while never losing sight of business objectives. Most marketers are either too focused on relationships or too focused on results. You understand that the best outcomes come from finding the perfect balance between both. By my 4th year at the company, I had been promoted again, this time to senior account manager with responsibility for the agency's largest technology sector client. My annual reviews consistently rated me as exceeding expectations, and my client retention rate was among the highest in the company. I was earning more than I had ever imagined when I first walked through those doors, and I was working on projects that challenged me intellectually while making a real impact on my clients' businesses. The success wasn't just professional, it was personal. I had found my calling in an industry that perfectly matched my skills and interests. The combination of strategic thinking, creative problem-solving, and relationship building felt natural, almost effortless. I looked forward to Monday mornings, genuinely excited about the challenges and opportunities each new week would bring. More importantly, I felt like I was part of something bigger than myself. Davidson & Associates had grown significantly during my time there, expanding from 35 employees to over 60. We had moved to a larger office space, hired specialists in emerging areas like social media marketing and marketing automation, and established ourselves as a leading agency in the Pacific Northwest technology sector. Tom's role had also expanded. He was now Senior Vice President of Strategic Development, with responsibility for all major client relationships and new business development. His success at the agency had been remarkable, and there were rumors that Richard Davidson was considering him as a potential successor when he eventually retired. Despite our professional success, Tom and I had also developed what I considered a genuine friendship. We'd occasionally grab lunch together, discussing everything from industry trends to personal goals. He was married to a corporate lawyer named Patricia, and they had 2 young children. Tom often spoke about wanting to provide them with opportunities he hadn't had growing up in a working-class family in Ohio. "You know, Marcus," he said during one of our lunch conversations, "success in this business isn't just about talent or hard work. It's about positioning yourself for the right opportunities when they come along. You've got to be ready to take calculated risks, to bet on yourself when others might play it safe." A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. I appreciated his mentorship and trusted his judgment. Tom had navigated the agency world successfully, and his advice had always been sound. When he suggested I take on additional responsibilities or pursue certain professional development opportunities, I listened carefully and usually followed his recommendations. By my 6th year at Davidson & Associates, I was managing a portfolio of 8 major clients, with a combined annual billing of over $2 million. My success had not gone unnoticed by the industry. I had been invited to speak at several marketing conferences, and our agency's case studies were frequently cited in trade publications. The recognition felt good, but what mattered most was the impact we were having on our clients' businesses. Companies that had been struggling to differentiate themselves in crowded markets were now industry leaders. Products that had been overlooked were now must-have solutions. Entrepreneurs who had brilliant ideas but couldn't communicate their value were now successfully scaling their businesses. This sense of purpose and achievement made the long hours and occasional stress worthwhile. I wasn't just building a career, I was building something meaningful, and I was doing it alongside colleagues who had become like family, led by someone I respected and trusted completely. Looking back now, I realized that my biggest mistake during those early years wasn't anything I did wrong professionally. It was assuming that loyalty and trust were mutual, that the relationships I valued so highly were built on the same foundation of respect and integrity that I brought to them. But sometimes the people closest to you are the ones who can hurt you the most, especially when they're planning something you never see coming. Years 7 and 8 at Davidson & Associates transformed everything I thought I knew about corporate success and personal loyalty. What started as the most rewarding period of my career slowly revealed itself as an elaborate stage where I was unknowingly playing a role in someone else's masterpiece. The breakthrough came when we landed Phoenix Industries, a Fortune 500 manufacturing conglomerate looking to rebrand their entire technology division. This wasn't just another client. This was the kind of account that agencies build their reputations on. Phoenix had annual revenues exceeding $8 billion, operations across 4 continents, and a marketing budget that dwarfed our entire agency's previous year's billing. The initial meeting took place in Phoenix's corporate headquarters in Chicago, a gleaming 40-story tower that seemed to pierce the clouds. Tom and I flew out together, spending the flight reviewing our presentation and discussing strategy. The conference room where we met their executive team was larger than most apartments, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. "Gentlemen," said Victoria Chen, Phoenix's chief marketing officer, "we're not looking for a traditional agency relationship. We need strategic partners who can help us completely reimagine how we position ourselves in the market. Our technology division has been underperforming for 3 years, and we believe the problem isn't our products, it's our messaging." The challenge was complex. Phoenix's technology division developed industrial automation systems that were technically superior to competitors, but perceived as outdated and expensive. Their brand suffered from association with heavy manufacturing, while the market was moving towards smart, connected solutions. They needed to maintain their reputation for reliability while positioning themselves as innovation leaders. Over the next 6 weeks, I immersed myself completely in understanding Phoenix's business. I traveled to their manufacturing facilities in Detroit, Atlanta, and Portland, interviewing engineers, factory managers, and customers. I studied their competitors, analyzed market trends, and mapped out the entire customer journey from initial awareness to long-term partnership. The insights were fascinating. Phoenix's products weren't just reliable, they were revolutionary. Their automation systems could reduce manufacturing costs by 30%, while improving quality control beyond industry standards. The problem was that their messaging focused on technical specifications instead of business transformation. Working 18-hour days, I developed a comprehensive rebranding strategy that repositioned Phoenix's technology division as the future of manufacturing. The campaign centered on real-world case studies showing how their systems had transformed struggling factories into efficient, profitable operations. Instead of talking about servo motors and programmable logic controllers, we focused on reduced downtime, increased productivity, and competitive advantage. The presentation to Phoenix's board of directors was scheduled for a Thursday morning in February. Tom and I had rehearsed every detail, anticipated every possible question, and prepared backup materials for various scenarios. The night before, we stayed up until 3 in the morning, fine-tuning slides and practicing our delivery. "Marcus," Tom said as we wrapped up our final preparation, "tomorrow is going to change everything for our agency. Phoenix represents the kind of client that can elevate us from regional players to national recognition. Your work on this proposal has been exceptional." The presentation went flawlessly. Board members asked insightful questions that demonstrated genuine engagement with our strategy. Victoria Chen took extensive notes, and the CEO, Jonathan Hayes, nodded approvingly throughout our discussion of implementation timelines and expected outcomes. 2 weeks later, Phoenix Industries officially selected Davidson & Associates as their strategic marketing partner for a 3-year contract worth $1.2 million annually. The announcement sent shockwaves through the industry. Trade publications featured articles about how a mid-sized Seattle agency had landed one of the most coveted accounts in manufacturing marketing. The success brought immediate recognition. Richard Davidson called an all-hands meeting to announce the Phoenix contract, highlighting the months of preparation and strategic thinking that had made it possible. Tom spoke eloquently about the collaborative effort, and when he specifically recognized my contributions, the entire staff erupted in applause. That evening, the agency threw a celebration party at one of Seattle's most exclusive rooftop venues. The view of Elliott Bay was spectacular, the champagne was flowing, and everyone was talking about how the Phoenix contract would transform our growth trajectory. I felt like I was living in a dream. 8 years of hard work had culminated in this moment of industry recognition and professional triumph. But success at this level comes with unexpected pressures. Managing the Phoenix account required a level of sophistication and resource allocation that stretched our agency's capabilities. We hired 3 new account managers, expanded our creative team, and invested in advanced analytics tools. The operational complexity was unprecedented, and I found myself working longer hours than ever before. The demands were relentless. Phoenix's executives expected weekly progress reports, detailed performance metrics, and strategic recommendations that went far beyond traditional marketing services. They wanted us to function as an extension of their internal team, providing insights on market positioning, competitive analysis, and business development opportunities. Despite the pressure, the collaboration was exhilarating. Victoria Chen and her team treated me as a trusted advisor, seeking my input on product launch strategies and market expansion plans. When they developed new automation technologies, I was among the first to review specifications and provide feedback on commercial viability. The campaign's success exceeded everyone's expectations. Within 6 months, Phoenix's technology division had increased market share by 18%, and their brand perception scores had improved dramatically. Industry analysts began positioning them as innovation leaders rather than traditional manufacturers. The transformation was so remarkable that Harvard Business School requested permission to develop a case study on the rebranding effort. My personal recognition within the industry grew exponentially. I was invited to deliver keynote speeches at major conferences, contribute articles to leading trade publications, and participate in panel discussions about the future of B2B market. The professional validation was intoxicating, but it also created an unexpected dynamic within the agency. Tom's enthusiasm for my success seemed to diminish as my individual recognition increased. During client meetings, he would interrupt my presentations or redirect conversations toward his own contribution. When trade publications requested interviews about the Phoenix campaign, he would insist on being the primary spokesperson, relegating me to secondary quotes or background information. Initially, I attributed this shift to the pressure of managing such a high-profile account. Tom was under enormous scrutiny from Richard Davidson and the board, and the agency's reputation was closely tied to Phoenix's continued satisfaction. But as months passed, the pattern became more pronounced and difficult to ignore. The first major incident occurred during a quarterly business review with Phoenix's executive team. I had prepared a comprehensive presentation analyzing campaign performance and recommending strategic adjustments for the upcoming quarter. The data showed exceptional results across all key metrics, and I was confident in my recommendations. 10 minutes before the meeting, Tom approached me with a concerned expression. "Marcus, I've been reviewing your presentation, and I think we need to make some adjustments. The tone feels too aggressive, and I'm worried it might create unrealistic expectations." Without waiting for my response, he began revising slides, softening language, and removing several strategic recommendations I considered essential. The changes fundamentally altered the presentation's impact, transforming it from a bold strategic roadmap into a cautious progress report. "Tom," I said, trying to maintain professionalism, "these recommendations are based on solid data and extensive market research. I believe Phoenix's team expects us to push boundaries and challenge conventional thinking." "I understand your perspective," he replied, "but we need to be careful not to overpromise. My experience with accounts this size suggests that conservative recommendations are more sustainable in the long run." The meeting proceeded with Tom's revised presentation, and while Phoenix's team didn't express satisfaction, I could sense their disappointment. Victoria Chen had specifically requested bold strategic thinking, and we had delivered incremental improvements. After the meeting, she pulled me aside privately. "Marcus, I was expecting more innovative recommendations today. Your initial strategy was so transformative, and I was hoping for that same level of breakthrough thinking for our next phase." I wanted to explain what had happened, but professional loyalty prevented me from undermining Tom's decision. Instead, I promised to schedule a follow-up meeting to discuss additional strategic opportunities. That evening, I worked until midnight developing supplementary recommendations that I could present as refinements to our original strategy. This pattern continued over the following month. Tom would review my work, make strategic adjustments, and present watered-down versions of my recommendations. Client feedback consistently requested more aggressive strategies, and I found myself constantly developing workarounds to deliver the innovative thinking they expected. The situation reached a tipping point during preparation for Phoenix's annual strategy planning session. This was their most important meeting of the year, where they would set direction for the entire technology division and allocate resources for upcoming initiatives. They had specifically requested our agency to facilitate strategic planning workshops and provide market intelligence that would inform their decision-making. I spent 3 weeks developing a comprehensive analysis of emerging trends, competitive threats, and market opportunity. The research revealed that Phoenix could dominate the smart manufacturing sector if they moved quickly to integrate artificial intelligence and machine learning into their automation system. The opportunity was significant, potentially doubling their market share within 5 years, but it required immediate action and substantial investment. My presentation outlined a bold strategic framework that positioned Phoenix as pioneers in intelligent manufacturing. The recommendations were ambitious but achievable, supported by detailed market research and financial projections. I believed this could be the defining moment that cemented their industry leadership for the next decade. 2 days before the strategy session, Tom scheduled a private meeting to review my presentation. His feedback was more extensive than usual, questioning fundamental assumptions and suggesting substantial revision. He wanted to eliminate references to artificial intelligence, reduce investment recommendations, and focus on incremental improvements to existing products. "Marcus, you're thinking too far ahead," he said, shaking his head. "Phoenix is a conservative company with traditional decision-making processes. These recommendations would require them to completely reimagine their business model." "Tom, that's exactly what they're asking for." Victoria specifically said they want transformative thinking, not incremental improvements. "The market data clearly shows that companies who don't embrace AI integration will be left behind. I understand the data, but I also understand client management. We can't risk our relationship with Phoenix by pushing recommendations they're not ready to implement." The conversation continued for over an hour, with Tom systematically dismantling every major recommendation I had developed. By the end, my transformative strategy had been reduced to a series of minor tactical adjustments that barely qualified as strategic planning. That night, I seriously considered whether to proceed with Tom's sanitized version or find a way to present my original recommendations directly to Phoenix's team. The ethical implications were complex. Undermining Tom's authority would violate professional protocols, but withholding strategic insights that could transform Phoenix's business felt like a betrayal of my responsibilities as their advisor. The decision was made for me the next morning when Victoria Chen called my direct line. "Marcus, I wanted to discuss tomorrow's strategy session. Jonathan Hayes has been telling his board about the innovative thinking you've brought to our rebranding campaign, and they're expecting similarly bold recommendations for our strategic planning." "Victoria, I appreciate the confidence and I believe we have some compelling insights to share." "Good. I also want you to know that Jonathan has been discussing expanding our relationship with Davidson and Associates. We're considering a comprehensive partnership that would make you our primary strategic advisor for all technology division initiatives." The conversation lasted 20 minutes, with Victoria outlining an expanded relationship that would triple our current contract value and position me as Phoenix's go-to strategic consultant. The opportunity was extraordinary, the kind of career-defining moment that most marketing professionals only dream about. After hanging up, I sat in my office, staring out at the Seattle skyline, wrestling with the implications of what I had just learned. Phoenix Industries wasn't just satisfied with our work. They were ready to bet their future on our continued partnership. But the partnership they envisioned was built on the innovative thinking and strategic insight that Tom had been systematically suppressing. For the first time in 8 years, I realized that my loyalty to Tom and my responsibility to clients had become fundamentally incompatible. The strategic session was scheduled for the following morning, and I had less than 18 hours to decide whether to present Tom's cautious recommendations or risk everything on the bold strategy that Phoenix actually needed. The weight of that decision would soon prove to be the least of my concerns. The Phoenix strategy session turned into a masterclass in corporate theater, though I didn't realize I was watching a performance until much later. I had decided to present my original recommendations despite Tom's objections, reasoning that Phoenix's explicit request for transformative thinking justified the risk. The meeting took place in Phoenix's executive boardroom, with Jonathan Hayes, Victoria Chen, and 6 other C-level executives around a mahogany table that probably cost more than my annual salary. Tom and I sat across from them, our presentation materials loaded and ready. Before we begin, Hayes announced, I want to emphasize how impressed our board has been with the strategic thinking Davidson and Associates has brought to our technology division. We're not looking for safe recommendations today. We need bold vision that positions us for the next decade. Tom smiled and nodded, but I caught the slight tightening around his eyes. He knew I was about to present the very recommendations he had tried to suppress. The presentation unfolded better than I had imagined. When I outlined the artificial intelligence integration strategy, Victoria Chen leaned forward with genuine excitement. When I detailed the market opportunity for smart manufacturing platforms, Hayes started taking note. Every major recommendation sparked engaged discussion and follow-up questions. Marcus, Hayes said during a break, this is exactly the kind of strategic framework we need. How quickly could we begin implementing these initiatives? Before I could respond, Tom interjected smoothly. Jonathan, while Marcus has done excellent research, we need to consider implementation complexity and resource requirements. Perhaps we should develop a phased approach that allows for more measured execution. The subtle undermining continued throughout the session. Every time I presented a bold recommendation, Tom would acknowledge its merit while introducing caveats about risk management and implementation challenges. He managed to do this without directly contradicting me, maintaining the appearance of collaborative discussion while systematically reducing the impact of my strategies. Despite Tom's interventions, the Phoenix team's enthusiasm was unmistakable. They scheduled immediate follow-up meetings to discuss implementation timelines and resource allocation. Victoria Chen specifically requested that I lead the strategic planning for their AI integration initiative, and Hayes mentioned the possibility of establishing a dedicated strategic consulting arrangement. The flight back to Seattle was tense. Tom congratulated me on the presentation while expressing concern about the aggressive timeline Phoenix was expecting. He suggested we needed to manage their expectations and develop more realistic implementation phases. Tom, they're not asking us to manage their expectations, I replied. They're asking us to help them transform their business. That's exactly what we should be doing. Marcus, you're thinking like a strategist, not like an agency executive. Our job is to provide sustainable solutions that protect our long-term relationship with the client. The conversation continued for most of the flight, with Tom emphasizing caution and risk management while I argued for bold execution. By the time we landed, I realized we had fundamentally different philosophies about client service and strategic consulting. Over the next few weeks, the philosophical differences became operational conflicts. Phoenix would request specific strategic deliverables, and I would develop comprehensive solutions that addressed their needs. Tom would then review my work, suggest modifications, and present revised versions that met his comfort level rather than their requirements. The breaking point came when Victoria Chen called to discuss their AI integration timeline. Phoenix had allocated $15 million for the initiative and wanted to begin implementation within 60 days. They needed strategic guidance on vendor selection, internal capability development, and change management process. Marcus, this is the most significant strategic initiative our division has ever undertaken, Victoria said. We need your team to function as our strategic advisors throughout the entire implementation process. I had already developed a comprehensive implementation framework, complete with vendor evaluation criteria, timeline milestones, and risk mitigation strategies. The plan was ambitious but achievable, and I was confident it would deliver the transformational results Phoenix was seeking. Tom's reaction was swift and decisive. He scheduled an immediate meeting with Richard Davidson to discuss what he called scope creep and client expectations management. Without consulting me, he recommended that we decline the expanded consulting engagement and focus on traditional marketing services. Marcus has done excellent work developing strategic frameworks, Tom explained to Davidson, but we need to be careful not to overextend our capabilities. AI integration consulting is outside our core competencies. I sat in that meeting, listening to Tom systematically dismantle the most significant opportunity our agency had ever received. His arguments sounded reasonable on the surface: concerns about liability, resource allocation, and operational complexity. But beneath the surface, I recognized something more troubling. Tom was deliberately limiting our growth to maintain his comfort zone. Tom makes valid points about risk management, Davidson replied, but this could be a game-changing opportunity for our agency. Marcus, what's your assessment of our ability to deliver on this engagement? I outlined the implementation strategy, addressing each of Tom's concerns with specific solutions and risk mitigation approaches. The opportunity was challenging but absolutely within our capabilities, especially with the right strategic partnerships and resource allocation. Davidson listened carefully, asked detailed questions, and seemed genuinely intrigued by the possibilities. This sounds like exactly the kind of strategic consulting that could differentiate us in the market. Tom, I understand your concerns, but I think we should seriously consider this opportunity. After the meeting, Tom requested a private conversation. We walked to a coffee shop near the office, and he was unusually direct about his concerns. Marcus, I need you to understand something. Phoenix Industries represents the largest client relationship in our agency's history. My reputation and career are tied to the success of this account. I can't allow ambitious consulting projects to jeopardize everything we've built. Tom, Phoenix isn't asking us to jeopardize anything. They're asking us to help them succeed. That's literally what strategic consulting means. You're missing the bigger picture. If we overcommit and fail to deliver, we lose not just Phoenix, but our credibility with every other major client. I need you to support my decision on this. The conversation lasted over an hour, with Tom increasingly emphasizing hierarchy and organizational alignment. He wasn't requesting my support, he was demanding it. For the first time in our 8-year relationship, I felt like I was talking to a corporate executive rather than a collaborative partner. Despite my misgivings, I agreed to support Tom's recommendation. Phoenix was disappointed but accepted our decision to focus on traditional marketing services. Victoria Chen made it clear that they would seek AI integration consulting elsewhere, and the missed opportunity weighed heavily on everyone involved. The incident marked a turning point in my relationship with Tom, but it also revealed something unexpected about Richard Davidson. During subsequent conversations, he began asking me direct questions about client needs, strategic opportunities, and my assessment of various situations. These weren't casual inquiries, they were systematic attempts to understand my perspective on the agency's strategic direction. Marcus, Davidson said during one of these conversations, you've developed exceptional relationships with our most important clients. They trust your judgment and value your strategic thinking. Have you ever considered what it would take to expand your role within the agency? The question caught me off guard. Davidson had always maintained clear hierarchical boundaries, with Tom serving as the primary interface between senior management and client-facing staff. This direct inquiry suggested he was considering organizational changes that could significantly impact my career trajectory. I've always focused on delivering value for our clients, I replied carefully. If there are opportunities to expand that impact, I'd certainly be interested in exploring them. Good. I'd like you to start thinking about that. We're entering a phase where strategic consulting could become a significant revenue stream, and we need people who can execute at that level. Over the following weeks, Davidson began including me in strategic planning discussions that had previously been limited to senior executives. He requested my input on new business proposals, asked for my assessment of competitive threats, and sought my recommendations for agency positioning. These conversations revealed something troubling about Tom's recent behavior. Davidson was unaware that Tom had been systematically modifying my strategic recommendations and client deliverables. He assumed the conservative approach reflected my judgment rather than Tom's risk aversion. Marcus, I've been surprised by some of the strategic recommendations we've been presenting to clients lately, Davidson said during one of our meetings. They seem more cautious than I would expect from someone with your reputation for innovative thinking. I found myself in an impossible position. Explaining Tom's interventions would undermine his authority and potentially damage his career. But allowing Davidson to believe the conservative strategies reflected my judgment was equally problematic. Richard, I think there's value in balancing innovation with implementation realities, I said diplomatically. Sometimes bold strategies need to be tempered with operational considerations. That's true, but our clients are explicitly requesting transformative thinking. We can't build a strategic consulting practice on incremental improvements. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Davidson pressing for more details about my strategic philosophy and approach to client consulting. By the end, I realized he was evaluating me for a significantly expanded role that would compete directly with Tom's responsibilities. That evening, I worked late reviewing client files and strategic documentation. What I discovered changed everything I thought I knew about my relationship with Tom and my position within the agency. Buried in email archives and project files, I found a pattern of communication that revealed Tom's systematic efforts to minimize my contributions and limit my client relationship. He had been having private conversations with clients, positioning himself as the primary strategic advisor while describing me as a talented but junior team member who needed oversight. More damaging were the internal memos Tom had been sending to Davidson and other senior executives. These documents consistently downplayed my strategic contributions, attributed successful outcomes to his leadership, and raised concerns about my readiness for expanded responsibilities. The most troubling discovery was a series of emails between Tom and Victoria Chen that I had never seen. In these messages, Tom had been apologizing for what he called my overly aggressive strategic recommendations and promising to provide more measured guidance in future interactions. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. For months, Tom had been systematically undermining my client relationships, suppressing my strategic contributions, and positioning himself as the indispensable intermediary between me and senior management. Every conversation about my career development, every discussion about expanded responsibilities, every strategic consultation had been filtered through his personal agenda. The betrayal was complete and devastating. The person I had trusted most, the mentor I had looked up to, the colleague I had considered a friend, had been methodically destroying my career while maintaining the appearance of support and collaboration. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. As I continued reviewing the archived communications, I discovered that Tom had been having conversations with Davidson about my future with the agency. Not conversations about promotion or expanded responsibilities. Conversations about whether I had become too independent, too client-focused, and potentially too threatening to established hierarchies. The final email in the chain was dated just 3 days earlier. Tom had recommended that Davidson consider transitioning Marcus to a more traditional account management role, where his creativity could be better channeled and his client relationships could be more effectively managed. Reading those words, I realized that Tom wasn't just undermining my current position. He was orchestrating my removal from strategic responsibilities entirely. The person I had trusted with my career was actively working to destroy it. For the first time in 8 years, I understood that my loyalty had been weaponized against me. Every confidence I had shared, every strategic insight I had developed, every client relationship I had built was being systematically dismantled by someone who had never intended to support my success. The restaurant where Tom would fire me was already reserved. The termination strategy was already planned. The only question was timing, and I was about to discover that even that had been carefully calculated to maximize the damage while minimizing his risk. But Tom had made one critical miscalculation. He had assumed that 8 years of loyalty had made me complacent, that trust had made me naive, and that friendship had made me defenseless. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The 3 weeks following my discovery of Tom's betrayal were the most strategically important of my entire career. While he believed I was obviously continuing my normal routine, I was actually executing the most comprehensive contingency plan I had ever developed. Every conversation, every document, every client interaction was carefully orchestrated to protect my interests and prepare for what I now knew was inevitable. My first priority was securing evidence. Working late into the evenings and early morning hours, I systematically documented Tom's pattern of undermining behavior. I compiled email chains showing his systematic modification of my strategic recommendation, recorded client feedback requesting more aggressive approaches that contradicted his conservative messaging, and captured financial data demonstrating the revenue opportunities we had missed due to his risk aversion. The documentation process revealed the full scope of his manipulation. Tom hadn't just been editing my work, He had been actively rewriting client communications to make my strategies appear less sophisticated. He would receive my detailed strategic analyses and then send summarized versions to clients that stripped away the innovative elements and reduced complex market insights to basic tactical recommendations. Most revealing were the internal performance reviews Tom had been submitting to Richard Davidson. While giving me positive feedback directly, his written evaluations consistently described me as talented but requiring guidance, creative but needing strategic oversight, and valuable as an implementer rather than a strategic thinker. These assessments directly contradicted the client feedback I was receiving and the industry recognition I had earned. The evidence compilation took 12 days of meticulous work, but the result was a comprehensive portfolio that told an undeniable story of systematic professional sabotage. More importantly, it demonstrated a clear pattern of behavior that could be verified through multiple independent sources. While building my evidence file, I began reaching out to strategic contacts within the industry. These weren't job-seeking conversations. They were relationship maintenance discussions that happened to reveal significant opportunities for someone with my experience and client relationships. The response was more positive than I had anticipated. Jennifer Walsh, the managing director of Strategic Solutions Partners, a boutique consulting firm in Portland, had been following my work with Phoenix Industries through trade publication coverage. "Marcus, we've been impressed by the strategic thinking behind the Phoenix transformation. That kind of comprehensive rebranding doesn't happen without exceptional strategic consulting capability." Similar conversations with executives at other agencies, consulting firms, and even former clients revealed a consistent theme. My reputation in the industry was significantly stronger than Tom had been allowing me to realize. The conservative strategies I had been forced to present hadn't damaged my professional standing because clients understood they were receiving diluted versions of my actual thinking. "You know, Marcus," said Brian Patterson, a former client who had moved to a senior role at a major technology company, "we always suspected you were holding back during those strategy sessions. The preliminary recommendations you would share informally were so much more sophisticated than the final presentations. We figured it was some kind of internal approval process." These conversations confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Tom's manipulations had been obvious to clients, but they had attributed the conservative final deliverables to agency politics, rather than recognizing them as deliberate sabotage of my work. The most significant opportunity came from an unexpected source. Elena Rodriguez, the founder of Catalyst Strategic Consulting, had built a reputation for transforming mid-sized companies through innovative marketing and business development strategy. Her firm specialized in the kind of strategic consulting that Tom had been systematically preventing me from delivering. "Marcus, I've been following your career for the past 2 years, through your conference presentations and published case study. The strategic frameworks you've developed demonstrate exactly the kind of thinking our clients need. Have you ever considered transitioning from agency work to strategic consult?" The conversation with Elena lasted over an hour, covering everything from consulting methodologies to business development strategy. She outlined an opportunity to join Catalyst as a senior partner leading their technology sector practice and working directly with Fortune 500 clients who needed transformational strategic guidance. The compensation would be significantly higher than traditional agency salaries, Elena explained, but more importantly, you'd have complete autonomy to develop and implement strategic solutions without political interference. "Our clients come to us specifically for bold thinking and transformational strategies. The opportunity was extraordinary not just financially but professionally." Catalyst's client portfolio included several companies that had specifically requested strategic consulting services that Davidson and Associates had declined to provide. Working with Elena would allow me to deliver the kind of high-impact strategic guidance that Tom had been preventing me from offering. But the most compelling aspect of Elena's proposal wasn't the immediate opportunity, it was the long-term vision. She outlined a 5-year plan to establish Catalyst as the premier strategic consulting firm for technology companies in the Pacific Northwest. The plan required someone with deep industry relationships, proven strategic capabilities, and the credibility to attract major clients. "Marcus, this isn't just a job opportunity, This is a partnership that could define the next phase of your career. We're offering you equity participation, client development autonomy, and the resources to build something truly significant. I didn't commit to anything during that conversation, but I agreed to review the detailed partnership proposal Elena promised to send. The timing was perfect. If Tom was planning to terminate my employment, I needed to ensure that his betrayal would actually accelerate my career rather than derail it. While developing these external opportunities, I also began strengthening my relationships with key clients. This required delicate navigation, since I needed to deepen client connections without violating professional protocols or alerting Tom to my activities. Victoria Chen at Phoenix Industries proved to be particularly receptive to expanded strategic discussion. During what appeared to be routine project update calls, she began asking for my perspective on broader business challenges that extended beyond our current marketing engagement. Marcus, we're facing some complex decisions about international expansion, and I value your strategic insight. Would you be available for a consulting session to discuss market entry strategies for European operations? These requests were exactly what Tom had been preventing me from accepting, but they came directly from clients who trusted my judgment and wanted access to my strategic thinking. I began accepting these consultations as informal advisory discussions, carefully documenting client needs that weren't being addressed through our current service agreements. The pattern was consistent across multiple clients. They were seeking strategic guidance that extended beyond traditional marketing services, and they specifically wanted my input on business development, competitive positioning, and growth strategy. Tom's conservative approach hadn't just limited my opportunities, it had created unmet client needs that represented significant revenue potential. 2 weeks after my conversation with Elena Rodriguez, I received the partnership proposal from Catalyst Strategic Consult. The terms were extraordinary: senior partner status, equity participation, base compensation that exceeded my current salary by 40%, and performance bonuses tied to client development and strategic project success. More compelling than the financial terms was the operational framework. As a senior partner, I would have complete autonomy to develop client relationships, design strategic solutions, and implement consulting engagements without oversight or interference. The bureaucratic constraints that had been stifling my work at Davidson & Associates would be replaced by entrepreneurial freedom and strategic independence. The proposal included detailed projections showing how my existing client relationships and industry reputation could generate over $2 million in consulting revenue within the first 18 months. Elena had done extensive research on my professional background, and her financial models were based on realistic assessments of my capabilities and market opportunity. Reading through the partnership agreement, I realized that Tom's betrayal had inadvertently positioned me for a career transformation that would have been impossible under normal circumstances. His systematic undermining had created a clear justification for leaving Davidson & Associates, while my suppressed strategic work had generated pent-up client demand for exactly the kind of consulting services Catalyst specialized in providing. The most satisfying element of the proposal was a clause allowing me to immediately begin serving former clients who requested strategic consulting services that extended beyond traditional market. Phoenix Industries, Integrated Systems Corp., and several other companies I had worked with had already expressed interest in expanded strategic consulting relationships. With the Catalyst partnership offer secured, I began the final phase of my preparation, developing a transition strategy that would protect my interests while minimizing disruption to client relationships. This required careful coordination of timing, communication, and legal consideration. My attorney, Sarah Mitchell, had experience with consulting industry transitions and employment contract disputes. After reviewing my Davidson & Associates employment agreement and the evidence of Tom's systematic undermining, she confirmed that I had multiple legal protections against retaliatory action. Marcus, your employment contract includes standard non-compete and non-solicitation clauses, but the company's failure to provide the strategic development opportunities they promised significantly weakens their ability to enforce these restrictions. More importantly, if they terminate you without cause, these clauses become essentially unenforceable. Sarah's analysis revealed that Tom's documented pattern of undermining my work could actually strengthen my legal position if Davidson and Associates attempted to prevent me from serving former clients or pursuing strategic consulting opportunities. The evidence I had compiled demonstrated that the company had systematically prevented me from delivering the services clients were requesting. The final element of my preparation involved careful financial planning. Leaving a stable agency position for consulting partnership represented a significant risk, but the potential rewards justified the calculated gamble. I had saved enough to cover 6 months of expenses, and Elena had guaranteed minimum compensation that would provide financial security during the transition period. By the morning of March 15th, everything was in place. I had documented evidence of Tom's betrayal, secured an extraordinary partnership opportunity, strengthened client relationships, obtained legal guidance, and prepared for the financial transition. If Tom followed through on his termination plan, I was ready to transform his intended destruction into the catalyst for my career transformation. The irony was perfect. Tom had spent months orchestrating what he believed would be my professional downfall, but his betrayal had actually forced me to prepare for opportunities that would exceed anything I could have achieved by remaining at Davidson and Associates. That Tuesday morning, Tom sent a casual email suggesting we have lunch to discuss some strategic planning ideas for our client portfolio. The restaurant he suggested was Meridian, an upscale establishment in downtown Seattle where we had celebrated several major client victories over the year. The location choice was particularly calculated. Meridian was where we had toasted the Phoenix Industries contract signing, where I had been promoted to senior account manager, and where Tom had given some of his most enthusiastic speeches about collaboration and mutual success. Using this venue for my termination was the perfect final touch to his elaborate betrayal. I accepted the lunch invitation with enthusiasm, expressing genuine excitement about discussing strategic planning opportunities. Tom's response was warm and collegial, maintaining the pretense of friendship, even while preparing to execute his carefully planned professional assassination. The morning of our lunch meeting, I arrived at the office early and completed final preparations for what I knew would be my last day at Davidson and Associates. I secured personal files, ensured all client work was properly documented for transition, and prepared the evidence portfolio that would protect my interests if legal disputes arose. At 11:30, Tom appeared at my office door with his characteristic confident smile. "Ready for lunch, Market? I'm looking forward to discussing some exciting strategic possibilities." As we walked to the elevator together, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought us to this moment. 8 years earlier, I had walked into this building as an ambitious junior coordinator, eager to learn from experienced professionals like Tom. Today I was leaving as a strategic consultant with the industry expertise, client relationships, and professional reputation to build something far more significant than anything Davidson and Associates could offer. The elevator doors closed, and I knew that by the time they opened again, everything would be different. Tom believed he was about to deliver the devastating blow that would end my career. Instead, he was about to discover that his betrayal had been the catalyst for my transformation into a competitor he had never anticipated facing. The game was about to begin, and for the first time in months I held all the winning cards. Meridian Restaurant occupied the 32nd floor of the Columbia Center, offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains. The host recognized us immediately. We had been regular customers for years, celebrating client wins and strategic milestones. Today, the familiar environment felt surreal, like attending a funeral in a wedding venue. Tom had requested a corner table by the windows, away from other diners. The privacy would be essential for what he was planning, though he didn't realize I understood the true purpose of our meeting. As we settled into the burgundy leather chairs, Tom maintained his characteristic warmth and professional charm. "Marcus, I wanted to discuss some organizational changes that Richard and I have been considering," he began, signaling the waiter for our usual wine selection. "The agency is entering a new phase, and we need to make some strategic adjustments to ensure continued growth." The opening was exactly what I had expected: corporate language designed to frame termination as strategic evolution, rather than personal betrayal. Tom had perfected this approach over the years, presenting difficult decisions as collaborative business necessities, rather than unilateral power moves. I'm always interested in strategic discussions, I replied, maintaining the same collegial tone that had characterized our relationship for 8 years. What kind of adjustments are you considering? Tom launched into a carefully rehearsed presentation about market dynamics, competitive pressures, and the need for organizational realignment. He spoke about specialization versus generalization, resource allocation efficiency, and client service optimization. Every phrase was calculated to sound reasonable and business-focused while building toward his predetermined conclusion. The reality is that our industry is becoming increasingly specialized, Tom continued, warming to his theme. Clients are seeking partners who can focus exclusively on their core competencies, rather than trying to be everything to everyone. The irony was exquisite. For months, Tom had been preventing me from developing the specialized strategic consulting capabilities that clients were explicitly requesting. He had systematically undermined every attempt to expand our service offerings, while now arguing that specialization was a business imperative. That's an interesting perspective, I said, allowing him to continue his performance. How do you see that affecting our current client relationships? Well, that's exactly what I wanted to discuss with you. We've reached a point where some of our clients are requesting services that extend beyond traditional marketing capabilities. Strategic consulting, business development advisory, transformation planning. These are specialized areas that require dedicated expertise. Tom paused to sip his wine, clearly savoring what he believed was his masterful setup. He had no idea that I had already documented every instance where he had prevented me from delivering exactly these services to clients who had specifically requested them. I've been having conversations with Richard about restructuring our client service model, he continued. We're considering establishing clear boundaries around our core competencies, while partnering with specialized consultants for extended strategic services. The waiter arrived with our appetizers, Caesar salads, just as Tom had ordered during countless previous celebrations. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. This was intended to be his final victory meal, enjoyed while delivering what he believed would be a career-ending blow. That sounds like a reasonable strategic approach, I replied, taking a bite of salad. How would this restructuring affect current account management responsibilities? Tom's expression shifted slightly, revealing the first hint of the satisfaction he was feeling. He had been building toward this moment for weeks, and he was clearly enjoying the anticipation of his final move. Marcus, I want you to know that this decision wasn't made lightly. You've been a valuable contributor to our team, and your client relationships have been exemplary. But we've reached a point where we need to make some difficult choices about resource allocation and strategic focus. The corporate euphemisms were flowing freely now. Valuable contributor instead of strategic leader, difficult choices instead of planned elimination, resource allocation instead of removing a perceived threat to his authority. I appreciate your candor, Tom. What specific changes are you considering? Well, Richard and I have concluded that your talents might be better utilized in a different organizational context. We've decided to restructure your roles significantly, which would involve transitioning your client relationships to other team members and focusing your responsibilities on more traditional account management functions. Tom paused dramatically, clearly expecting shock, disappointment, or desperation. He had orchestrated this moment to maximize psychological impact, believing that the loss of strategic responsibilities and client relationships would devastate my professional identity. Alternatively, he continued, we recognize that this restructuring might not align with your career aspirations. If you prefer, we could arrange a generous severance package that would provide financial security while you explore opportunities that better match your professional goals. The false choice was perfectly presented: accept professional demotion and watch my career stagnate, or take severance and face an uncertain future without the client relationships that had defined my success. Tom had constructed what he believed was an impossible situation designed to force my resignation while maintaining plausible corporate cover. Tom, I appreciate you being direct about these organizational considerations, I replied calmly. This is obviously a significant decision that requires careful thought. Of course, Marcus, I want you to take whatever time you need to consider your options. However, I should mention that the restructuring timeline is fairly aggressive. We would need to begin transitioning client relationships within the next 2 weeks. The artificial urgency was another calculated element. Tom wanted to prevent me from mounting any resistance or exploring alternatives. By demanding an immediate decision, he hoped to force acceptance of his predetermined outcome. 2 weeks does seem like a compressed timeline for such a significant organizational change, I observed. What's driving the urgency? Well, Phoenix Industries has been requesting expanded strategic consulting services, and we've decided to partner with external specialists rather than attempting to develop these capabilities internally. This decision affects how we structure our entire client service model. The mention of Phoenix was Tom's masterstroke, or so he believed. He was informing me that the client who valued my strategic thinking most highly would be served by external consultants, rather than allowing me to develop those capabilities within the agency. It was professional cruelty disguised as business necessity. That's certainly a significant strategic shift, I replied. Phoenix has been very satisfied with our strategic guidance to date. Yes, but they're looking for more specialized expertise than we can provide internally. Richard and I have concluded that attempting to compete with dedicated strategy firms would be a mistake. Tom was clearly enjoying this revelation. He believed he was systematically dismantling my professional foundation while demonstrating his superior strategic vision. The Phoenix relationship that had defined my recent success was being sacrificed to external consultants, and my role was being eliminated to prevent any interference with his grand plan. Tom, I want to make sure I understand the full scope of what you're proposing, I said, setting down my fork and meeting his gaze directly. You're suggesting that I accept a significantly reduced role with limited client contact, or take severance, and leave the agency entirely. That's correct, Marcus. I know it's not ideal, but sometimes strategic decisions require difficult personal adjustments. Tom's satisfaction was becoming more obvious. He had delivered his carefully planned ultimatum, and was waiting for the emotional breakdown he expected. Years of manipulation had led to this moment of apparent triumph, where his systematic betrayal would finally achieve its intended result. I appreciate your honesty about the situation, I replied. Before I respond to your proposal, I'd like to share some information that might affect these strategic considerations. Tom's expression shifted slightly, registering mild curiosity mixed with continued confidence. He couldn't imagine what information I might possess that could alter his carefully constructed scenario. Marcus, I'm always interested in your perspectives, but I should emphasize that these organizational decisions have already been finalized at the executive level. I understand, Tom. Nevertheless, I think you'll find this information relevant to your strategic planning. I reached into my portfolio and withdrew a bound document that I placed on the table between us. The cover page was clearly labeled Strategic Consulting Partnership Proposal. Catalyst Strategic Consulting. Tom's expression changed immediately. The confident satisfaction was replaced by confusion, then concern, as he realized that I was presenting him with something completely unexpected. Marcus, what is this? It's a partnership offer from Elena Rodriguez at Catalyst Strategic Consulting. They've been following my work with Phoenix Industries and other technology clients. They're offering me a senior partner position with equity participation and complete autonomy to develop strategic consulting relationships. Tom picked up the document with trembling hands, quickly scanning the executive summary that outlined compensation terms, client development opportunities, and partnership structure. His face grew pale as he absorbed the implications of what he was reading. When did you receive this offer? He asked, his voice noticeably strained. 3 weeks ago, Tom, right around the time I discovered the email communications where you've been systematically undermining my client relationships and strategic contribution. I withdrew a second document from my portfolio, the evidence file documenting his pattern of manipulation and sabotage. Tom's eyes widened as he recognized the familiar email headers and internal memoranda that he had assumed were private communication. Marcus, I can explain. Actually, Tom, I think you've explained quite enough. The emails speak for themselves. Your systematic modification of my strategic recommendations, your private communications with clients positioning yourself as the primary strategic advisor, your internal memos questioning my readiness for expanded responsibilities. It's all very thoroughly documented. Tom was now completely off balance, his carefully scripted termination plan derailed by revelations he had never anticipated. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, and he was scrambling to regain control of a situation that had spiraled beyond his influence. Marcus, those communications were taken out of context. I was trying to protect both you and the agency from potential overcommitment. Tom, please don't insult my intelligence. I've spent 3 weeks analyzing your pattern of behavior and it's remarkably consistent. Every strategic recommendation I developed was systematically watered down. Every client relationship I built was subjected to your interference. Every opportunity for professional growth was blocked by your risk aversion. The waiter approached to refill our wine glasses, creating a surreal moment of normal restaurant service in the midst of our corporate confrontation. Tom waved him away impatiently, his composure completely shattered. What do you want, Mark? The question revealed how completely the situation had reversed. Tom had entered this lunch, confident in his power to dictate my professional future. Now he was asking what I wanted, implicitly acknowledging that I held leverage he hadn't anticipated. What I want, Tom, is for you to understand that your betrayal has actually accelerated my career in ways you never imagined. The Catalyst partnership offer represents everything you've been preventing me from achieving: strategic autonomy, client development freedom, and financial rewards that reflect my actual market value. I continued calmly. Phoenix Industries, Integrated Systems Corp. And 3 other clients have already expressed interest in expanded strategic consulting relationships that extend beyond traditional marketing service. Elena Rodriguez has confirmed that Catalyst can immediately begin serving these clients in areas where Davidson and Associates has declined to develop capabilities. Tom's face was now completely drained of color. He was beginning to understand that his systematic undermining hadn't just failed. It had created the perfect conditions for my departure with significant competitive advantages. Marcus, surely we can work something out. Perhaps we've been too conservative in our strategic approach. I'm sure Richard would be open to reconsidering the organizational restructuring. Tom, the Catalyst offer includes a non-compete waiver clause. Elena's attorneys have confirmed that Davidson and Associates' systematic prevention of my strategic development significantly weakens any employment contract restrictions. Your documented interference with my professional growth actually strengthens my legal position for serving former clients. The final revelation hit Tom like a physical blow. His betrayal hadn't just failed. It had eliminated the legal protections that might have prevented me from competing directly with the agency. His systematic sabotage had become the foundation for my liberation from any contractual restriction. So, Tom, to answer your original question about strategic adjustments, I accept your severance offer. I'll be transitioning to Catalyst Strategic Consulting as a senior partner, and I'll be serving several former clients who have requested strategic consulting services that you've prevented me from delivering. Tom sat in stunned silence, staring at the documents that represented the complete collapse of his carefully planned professional assassination. The termination he had orchestrated as my career's end had become the catalyst for a transformation that would make me a direct competitor with capabilities he had spent months suppressing. I want to thank you, Tom, for forcing me to prepare for this transition so thoroughly. Your betrayal made me realize that my loyalty was being weaponized against my own interests. The strategic consulting practice I'm about to launch wouldn't have been possible without the client relationships you tried so hard to undermine. The main courses arrived, but neither of us touched our food. Tom was processing the magnitude of his miscalculation, while I was savoring the perfect justice of the moment. His attempt to destroy my career had instead liberated me to pursue opportunities that exceeded anything possible within his constraints. The lunch that was supposed to end my career had instead marked the beginning of my transformation into the competitor he had never imagined facing. The silence at our table stretched for nearly 3 minutes. Tom stared at the Catalyst partnership proposal as if it might disappear if he looked away, while I calmly finished my Caesar salad. The view of Elliott Bay remained spectacular, but the atmosphere had fundamentally shifted from corporate theater to genuine revelation. Marcus, Tom finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, I never intended for things to develop this way. Tom, your intentions were crystal clear from the documentation I've compiled. You intended to eliminate me as a strategic threat, while maintaining plausible corporate cover. The only miscalculation was assuming I wouldn't discover your systematic betrayal. Tom attempted to regain some semblance of authority, straightening in his chair and adopting the executive demeanor that had served him throughout his career. Let's discuss this rationally. Perhaps we've both made assumptions that need clarification. The only assumption I made was trusting someone who was systematically undermining everything I built. The evidence file contains 47 separate instances of your interference with my client relationships and strategic contributions. There's nothing to clarify. I signaled the waiter for the check, indicating that our business was concluded. Tom's attempts at damage control were too little, too late. His carefully constructed betrayal had been exposed, and my response had been prepared with the same strategic thinking he had been suppressing. Marcus, think about what you're doing. Davidson and Associates provided the platform for your professional development. Richard Davidson took a chance on you when you were nobody. The desperation was becoming obvious now. Tom was appealing to loyalty and gratitude while ignoring that his systematic betrayal had destroyed any foundation for either emotion. His manipulation had been so thorough that he seemed genuinely surprised by the consequence. Tom, Davidson and Associates provided a paycheck and basic professional experience. Everything else, the client relationships, the strategic expertise, the industry reputation, I developed despite your interference, not because of your support. I placed my credit card on the table, making it clear that I was concluding our final business meal. The Phoenix Industries relationship that you're planning to outsource to external consultants. Victoria Chen specifically requested my strategic guidance. The AI integration consulting that you declined, they're implementing it with a different firm next month. Tom's expression revealed that he was beginning to understand the full scope of opportunity costs his conservative approach had created. By systematically preventing strategic expansion, he hadn't just limited my growth, he had forfeited significant revenue streams that clients were actively seeking. How many other clients have requested services that you've been declining? I continue. How much consulting revenue has the agency missed because you were more concerned with maintaining control than serving client needs? The waiter returned with the check, and I completed the transaction while Tom sat in stunned contemplation. The symbolism was perfect. I was paying for the meal where he had intended to fire me, while presenting evidence that his betrayal had liberated me to pursue opportunities that would exceed anything he could offer. Marcus, what happens now? Now, Tom, you return to the office and explain to Richard Davidson why your strategic consulting hire is transitioning to a competitor with several major clients in tech. You explain why the Phoenix Industries relationship you were so concerned about protecting is moving to external consultants who will provide the innovative thinking you prevented me from delivering. I stood and gathered my documents, preparing to leave Tom with the wreckage of his carefully planned professional assassination. You also explain why the agency's most successful account manager over the past 3 years is becoming a direct competitor with legal protection that your own sabotage created. The walk to the elevator was surreal. 8 years of collaboration, mentorship, and what I had believed was genuine friendship had culminated in this moment of complete professional divorce. Tom remained at the table, staring out at Elliott Bay while processing the magnitude of his miscalculation. Returning to the office felt like visiting a museum of my former career. My workspace contained 8 years of accumulated professional materials, client mementos, and project documentation that represented a significant portion of my adult life. The process of clearing my desk would be both practical and symbolic, removing the artifacts of one career phase while preparing for another. The afternoon was a whirlwind of transition activity. I completed final project documentation for seamless client handovers, organized files for my replacement, and prepared comprehensive status reports that would protect client interests during the transition period. Despite my anger at Tom's betrayal, I maintained professional standards that reflected my commitment to client service. Around 4 o'clock, Richard Davidson appeared at my office door. His expression was serious but not hostile, suggesting that Tom had provided some version of our lunch conversation without revealing the full scope of his manipulative behavior. Marcus, Tom mentioned that you've received an interesting opportunity from Catalyst Strategic Consulting. I'd like to discuss this situation before any final decisions are made. We walked to Davidson's corner office, a space where I had presented strategic recommendations, celebrated client victories, and received performance reviews that consistently exceeded expectations. Today, it would be the venue for my final conversation as a Davidson and Associates employee. Richard, I want you to understand that this decision wasn't made lightly. Catalyst has offered me partnership opportunities that align perfectly with my professional goals and client development interests. Marcus, I've always valued your strategic thinking and client relationships. If there are aspects of your current role that need adjustment, perhaps we can explore modifications that would encourage you to stay. The conversation that followed was both enlightening and frustrating. Davidson was genuinely unaware of Tom's systematic interference with my strategic development and client relationships. He assumed the conservative approaches we had been presenting reflected my judgment rather than Tom's risk aversion. Richard, the strategic consulting services that Catalyst specializes in are exactly what Phoenix Industries and other clients have been requesting. Tom has been systematically declining these opportunities while positioning the decisions as collaborative strategic choices. I presented selected documentation showing client requests for expanded consulting services that had been declined or significantly modified. Davidson's expression grew increasingly concerned as he reviewed evidence of missed opportunities and client dissatisfaction with conservative approaches. Marcus, I had no idea that clients were requesting these kinds of strategic services. Tom assured me that our current service model was meeting all client needs. Richard, Phoenix Industries allocated $15 million for AI integration consulting. They specifically requested our guidance on strategic planning and implementation. Tom recommended that we decline the engagement and refer them to external consultants. The revelation clearly shocked Davidson. The Phoenix contract represented the largest client relationship in agency history, and declining additional revenue opportunities contradicted everything he understood about effective client service. Why would Tom recommend declining such a significant opportunity? You would need to ask Tom for his reasoning. What I can tell you is that Catalyst Strategic Consulting specializes in exactly these kinds of transformational consulting engagements, and they've confirmed that several of our current clients would benefit from these services. The conversation continued for 45 minutes, with Davidson asking detailed questions about client needs, strategic opportunities, and the Catalyst partnership proposal. His genuine surprise at the scope of missed opportunities suggested that Tom's manipulation had been even more extensive than I had realized. Marcus, if we could restructure your role to include strategic consulting development, would that change your assessment of the Catalyst opportunity? Richard, the Catalyst partnership includes equity participation, complete strategic autonomy, and immediate access to Fortune 500 clients who are seeking transformational consulting service. The financial and professional opportunities exceed anything possible within traditional agency structure. However, I hope we can structure your transition in a way that protects existing client relationships and maintains positive professional connections. The discussion of transition logistics was refreshingly straightforward. Davidson was primarily concerned with client continuity and maintaining the agency's reputation. He agreed to accelerate my departure timeline to accommodate the Catalyst partnership while ensuring seamless handovers for current projects. Richard, I want to emphasize that my clients' success remains my top priority. Several of them have already expressed interest in expanded strategic consulting relationships, and Catalyst is prepared to serve those needs immediately. I appreciate your commitment to client service, Mark. While I'm disappointed to lose someone of your caliber, I understand that Catalyst offers opportunities we currently can't match. The professional courtesy Davidson demonstrated stood in stark contrast to Tom's manipulative betrayal. Even in departure, Richardson maintained the integrity and straightforward communication that had characterized his leadership throughout my tenure. By 6 o'clock, my transition arrangements were final. I would complete my final week at Davidson and Associates while beginning partnership preparations with Catalyst Strategic Consulting. The severance package was generous, and Davidson had agreed to provide strong professional references that would support my consulting practice development. That evening, I called Elena Rodriguez to confirm my acceptance of the Catalyst partnership offer. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and she outlined an aggressive timeline for establishing my technology sector practice and beginning client development activity. Marcus, we're prepared to announce your partnership immediately. Phoenix Industries has already confirmed their interest in strategic consulting services, and we've received inquiries from 2 other technology companies based on your industry reputation. The transition happened with remarkable speed. Within 1 week I had completed my final projects at Davidson & Associates, finalized the Catalyst partnership agreement, and begun strategic planning for my first consulting engagement. The professional transformation that Tom had tried to prevent became the foundation for opportunities that exceeded my most optimistic projection. Phoenix Industries became Catalyst's largest technology sector client, engaging us for the AI integration consulting that Davidson & Associates had declined. Victoria Chen expressed genuine excitement about working with strategic consultants who could provide the innovative thinking she had been seeking. Marcus, this is exactly the kind of transformational strategic guidance we needed. The preliminary recommendations you've developed demonstrate the sophisticated thinking that will differentiate our technology division in the marketplace. Integrated Systems Corp followed shortly after, requesting comprehensive business development consulting that would help them expand into international markets. The strategic frameworks I developed for their global expansion exceeded anything I could have delivered within traditional agency constraints. Marcus, said Robert Martinez during our first Catalyst strategy session, this level of strategic consultation represents exactly what we've been missing. Your understanding of our technical capabilities combined with sophisticated market analysis creates the perfect foundation for international growth. Within 6 months, my Catalyst technology practice had generated over $1.8 million in consulting revenue, while serving clients who valued strategic innovation over conservative risk management. The professional autonomy Elena had promised allowed me to develop consulting solutions that addressed complex business challenges, rather than limiting recommendations to marketing tactics. The industry recognition followed naturally. Trade publications featured articles about successful technology sector transformations, conference organizers requested keynote presentations, and other consulting firms began recruiting professionals with similar strategic consulting capability. Most satisfying was the feedback from former Davidson & Associates clients who had transitioned to Catalyst for strategic consulting services. They consistently expressed appreciation for finally receiving the innovative thinking and transformational guidance they had been requesting. Marcus, Victoria Chen said during our quarterly business review, the strategic consulting relationship with Catalyst has exceeded every expectation. The AI integration project is delivering results that will transform our competitive position for the next decade. 1 year after the Meridian restaurant lunch where Tom had intended to end my career, I was delivering a keynote presentation to the National Association of Strategic Consultants about transformational business consulting in the technology sector. The audience included senior executives from Fortune 500 companies who were seeking exactly the kind of strategic guidance that Tom had been systematically preventing me from providing. The presentation concluded with a case study about Phoenix Industries' AI integration success, demonstrating how strategic consulting had transformed a traditional manufacturing company into an innovation leader. The transformation wouldn't have been possible without bold strategic thinking and aggressive implementation timelines, exactly the approach Tom had consistently opposed. During the networking reception following my presentation, several executives approached me about potential consulting engagements for their own company. The demand for transformational strategic consulting continued to exceed supply, creating opportunities for consultants who could deliver sophisticated analysis combined with practical implementation guidance. Marcus, said Jennifer Walsh from Strategic Solutions Partners, your approach to technology sector consulting represents exactly what our industry needs. The combination of technical understanding, strategic sophistication and implementation focus creates exceptional value for clients. The professional recognition was gratifying, but the personal satisfaction was even more meaningful. Tom's betrayal had forced me to develop independence, strategic thinking, and competitive capabilities that would have remained dormant within traditional employment structure. His attempt to destroy my career had instead accelerated my transformation into the strategic consultant I was meant to become. 2 years after leaving Davidson and Associates, Elena Rodriguez and I were discussing expansion plans for Catalyst Strategic Consult. The technology practice I had developed was generating over $3 million in annual revenue, and we were considering establishing regional offices to serve clients across the Pacific Northwest. Marcus, your partnership has transformed our firm's capabilities and market position. The strategic consulting practice you've built represents exactly the kind of specialized expertise that technology companies need for competitive differentiation. Tom's betrayal had become the catalyst for professional success that exceeded anything possible within his constraints. The lunch where he had tried to fire me had instead liberated me to pursue opportunities that transformed both my career and the clients I served. Sometimes the people who try to destroy you end up being the greatest contributors to your success. Tom's systematic undermining forced me to develop resilience, strategic planning, and competitive capabilities that defined my transformation from employee to entrepreneur. The best revenge, as they say, is massive success. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.